Picks the tune out and he blows it on the hum. Down on the corner, out in the street, playing the folk boys are playing, bringing it up happy feet.
It's got a warm vibe to it, doesn't it? Like weather warm. So I'm here for you, Creedence Clearwater Revival, or CCR to your friends. On this day in 1970, 5 singles and 5 albums by CCR were certified gold in the U.S. One of those singles, the one you just heard, Down on the Corner. You want to know the others, don't you? Like, you really want to know the other 4 singles from Creedence Clearwater Revival. Certified gold on this day in 1970. All right, my gift to you on this Monday morning. Looking out my back door, Travelin' Band, Bad Moon Rising, and Up Around the Bend. If you would have rather heard one of those songs to start, I'm sorry. I chose Down on the Corner. It is 6 minutes after 9 on this Monday morning, the 16th of December. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for spending some of your time with us. It is the most valuable commodity you have, and it really does mean a lot that you spend some of it with us every day. Hope you're ready for some conversation and some interaction. It's Monday, of course. That means with open lines from noon until 1. It is your rant or rave edition of the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, so get it off your chest and onto the air. Kitchener Rangers, 7-game winning streak coming to an end yesterday in where else but London. Those nasty, nasty nights just continuing to hold some sort of magical mastery over the Kitchener Rangers. Good game, though, in London. Nothing to hang your head about. You just wish you would have come away with the 2 points. We're going to be on the road. We've got a weeknight game Wednesday in Sarnia. And then on Friday, we're back home at the Memorial Auditorium. And that will be the last game before the Christmas break. You got to love this front page story on the Waterloo Region Record today, written by Jeff Uthit, who spoke to a data analyst who looked at 9,000 collision records. And out of those 9,000 records of collisions on streets in our region, there were fewer than 5 per year on any road in the vicinity of 68 schools in Kitchener. Fewer than 5 times per year was there any collision anywhere near one of Kitchener's 68 schools. For 2/3 of those 68 schools, or more than 40 of them, there has never been a collision in the vicinity of the school, which leads one to ask the question, what data is it that we are using to support the increase in speed cameras being installed? I will tell you the data that we are using. None. There is zero. There's a big fat donut worth of data being used, except perhaps emotional data. Can we call it that? Because if you scream safety, then we will spend the money. That's all it takes. It's not safe. It's just not safe. We need to make it safer. Okay, here's your money. You know what we need to do over here? We need to make this safer. Okay, here's your money. Data still has to matter somewhere, somehow, doesn't it? This is not a safe place. Okay, well, what does the data tell us? Oh, the data tells us that at 2/3 of the schools, there's never been a collision in the vicinity. So we need speed cameras. Why? Oh, because you want to increase revenue. And then the companies that make the cameras, they want to sell the cameras, and municipalities want to buy the cameras because the cameras make it safer, even though the data shows that there have been very few, if any, collisions. Do you see how this works? It's tough sometimes. It's tough using data when you have an emotional reaction to something. It's just not safe. Won't anybody think of the children?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And off we go for your Farwell Show 5 this Monday morning. Number 1, postal workers will be back on the job tomorrow after the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered a return to work. Number 2, the National Post is reporting today that we will not be receiving that $250 rebate check from the federal government. The newspaper says the so-called Working Canadians rebate won't be a part of today's economic statement. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland will deliver that economic update this afternoon with projections that Canada will be sitting on a deficit near $47 billion. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Prime Minister Trudeau's recent 4-day trip to Europe cost us almost $1 million, with a huge expense just for food.
On food alone, they spent $71,000. And if you just do the math, like on average, each one of these delegates spent $1,700 on food, and this was a 4-day trip. So, the per person spending on food for Trudeau and his entourage was more than what the average Canadian family spends on groceries in an entire month.
Franco Terrazzano, federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, says the food bill included veal, lamb, 4 different kinds of wine, and more than $800 spent on junk food from a grocery store prior to takeoff. Number 4 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Housing Minister Sean Fraser expected to announce today that he won't be seeking re-election, citing family reasons. Rumors of a federal cabinet shuffle have been swirling lately, with Prime Minister Trudeau reportedly aggressively courting former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney to join cabinet. And number 5, you win some, you lose some, and the Leafs did both this weekend, beating Buffalo last night but losing to Detroit on Saturday. Still, in that Saturday game, we got a little Auston Matthews magic, which means we get a little AM on AM in the AM on our Monday.
Marner holds, still in the slot, off in the side, they score! One-timer, Auston Matthews!
Auston Matthews, initials AM on AM radio in the AM part of the day, and that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. Your morning wake-up call is coming up. You can make it, or I will. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Hold your horses, or whatever else you wish to clutch right now. Moments ago, dear Prime Minister, it has been the honor of my life to serve in government, working for Canada and Canadians. We have accomplished a lot together. On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in the cabinet. Upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from the cabinet. The letter goes on several paragraphs still, and it is signed with gratitude, the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, PC, MP. Chrystia Freeland has resigned from her position as finance minister with our federal government. We are expecting to hear the same from Sean Fraser, housing minister, later today, resigning from cabinet, not seeking re-election. Chrystia Freeland does not talk about her political future, but she is resigning as the federal finance minister, effective moments ago. Who gets to deliver the fall economic statement now? I really hope that Prime Minister Trudeau has to do it. I don't know if our Westminster Parliamentary Convention allows for such a thing to happen, but I would love for the Prime Minister to have to get up and deliver that statement, or maybe Mark Carney will appear out of thin air. I know not the answers, but I do know that Chrystia Freeland has, effective about 9:05 this morning, resigned from her position as federal finance minister. Wowzers. That's a bit of a Monday morning bombshell, isn't it? You know that every time we start this show, 9 o'clock in the morning, phone lines open up because we wish to hear from you. We like to get your input on the things we talk about. We like to hear your thoughts. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Paul is on the phone with us this morning. Good morning, Paul.
Morning. Just coincidence, but what great news for Canada. You got to accept the fact that it was a lie. She didn't resign. She was thrown out by Trudeau, but he doesn't want to do that because he's a feminist, and they like to see him throw out another female cabinet minister. But
she is committed to running again for her seat in Toronto as I read the rest of that letter. So her political future, she still hopes to have one, a future in politics.
Yeah. Hey, listen, that was absolutely nothing to do. As great a news as that is, it was nothing to do with the reason I was calling. You know, all your ranting about speed cameras in school zones, why don't you just find a shoe that tastes good?
No, Paul, listen. No, I know I said that if we have 175 speed cameras in the region by 2028, I will eat my shoe. A, I'm getting a cake baked in the shape of a shoe. B, it's not happening. We're not going to.
You do admit it's going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. If it happens, it's not going to happen. Okay, fine. I'm going to keep it a leather shoe. I don't care. It's not happening, Paul. It's not happening. Even Kitchener's already backed out, so they're pushing back like they should.
Yeah. Well, you know, discussions just the other day about this. You know, like 3:00 in the morning. This is totally ridiculous. You know, if they're actually talking about safety, you do enforcement. You do not set up something to try and make money and hope that people don't slow down.
But as the data shows, and I've always wondered about this, you want safer roads? Put traffic control or enforcement on Weber Street. Like, that's where you need to do it, not on these streets where schools are, because nobody's speeding there.
There's more profit putting them there than there is anyplace else. You know, because, you know, I drive, I know where the schools are around here. So what I do is, you know, Concession Road here in Preston, you know, it's a fairly busy road and whatnot. Being old and retired, I like to drive along there at the speed limit and watch the traffic get backed up behind me. You know, but I spend more time staring at the dashboard, watching that speedometer to make sure that I don't go over 30. I can't put it on cruise control. It won't lock in at a speed that low. So I spend all my time watching that speedometer instead of watching the road.
Oh, well, listen, the last thing we need is Paul not watching the road, but I can certainly understand his delight as the traffic backs up behind him because he's doing the speed limit. At minimum, we need to turn these suckers off outside of school hours and school days. But honestly, can we use data? How about we make decisions based on data instead of based on feelings? I mean, I feel like my job is worth $1 million. No? You're not going to pay me $1 million? Okay, I'll just keep doing it for this much then. This is the Mike Farwell Show. I really feel it's worth $1 million, though. 570 News Radio. Former Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. We need to take the threat of economic nationalism in the United States very seriously. That means, and I quote, keeping our fiscal powder dry today so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. If that doesn't reinforce what the National Post was reporting this morning, I don't know what will. The $250 rebate ain't coming. That would be a costly political gimmick on the part of the federal Liberals. Let's go back to the phones, hear more from you this morning. George, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. I'm very surprised that Paul from Preston did not bring up the fact that he knew. Mike, do you remember about a week or two ago, he said no one is getting that $250 check.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he did. I forget what he said. He said there was a reason why no one was going to get it. And look, Paul from Preston, once again, he's not paying me. Once again is right.
Easy. Once again. You mean once. This is the first time, George.
Have a great day, Mike.
You too. Thanks very much for the call. Always good to hear from you. Andre, good morning.
Mikey, two things. I'll be very quick. One, for the camera, I know you're very scared to eat your shoe. Two, I feel like $1 million because I heard that the Minister of Finance has room for David Drewe. So think about it quick.
Think about David Drewe being finance minister?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Andre, thanks for the call. Good timing, because today is Monday, and that means our friend David Drewe will join us for Drew's Views this morning at 11:30. The timing could not be better, because you can be sure that David will have some views on the now former federal cabinet minister, and likely the incoming. I mean, this marks the beginning of the Mark Carney era with this Liberal government, right? So out with the old, in with the new. And Chrystia Freeland resigns her position after being told on Friday that she was no longer wanted as Minister of Finance. She was offered another position in cabinet, but she's like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to resign from my position. Presumably let you, Justin Trudeau, bring in Mark Carney, and Chrystia Freeland will move on with her political life, intending to run again for her seat in Toronto in the next federal election, which is when? 5 months? 6 months from now? Many say we will not make it until October before the next federal election. So 2025 is going to be a political year. By all accounts, a provincial election, February, March-ish. They don't want to go together, so give it another couple to a few months after that, and we will have a federal election towards summer, likely. And 2025 will be the year of provincial and federal elections in this country. And the year after, we can just go back to the polls again for a municipal election. Are you not entertained? Do you wish to be engaged in what's going on? Well, here are your opportunities to have your say politically. All three of them coming up in short order. All right, I've got to get you to the 570 News Centre for an update. And then Canada's temporary foreign worker program. How is it impacted with new immigration limits? We'll talk about that coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio. Well, as far as plans go, here is the federal government's new immigration levels plan. For the first time, the federal government writes, we're extending our levels plan to also include targets for temporary residents, taking into account the full scope of all newcomers and helping reduce temporary resident volumes to 5% of Canada's population by the end of 2026. What will the impact of this plan be on the temporary foreign worker program? Dr. Jenna Hennebree is a professor in International Migration Research Center at Wilfrid Laurier University and joins us to talk about it. Jenna, good morning.
Good morning.
Why did so many hold the view when we look at the temporary foreign workers program itself? Because I've heard this repeated several times, that the program was originally set up to fail. It didn't stand a chance. Why do so many hold that view?
Well, look, I think, the program was set up with an idea of filling more acute temporary labor shortages in a period of time when, certain parts of the economy were growing and needed more workers, like in agriculture, for example. Then it was expanded and run by ESDC, which is a different department in the Immigration Department. And that program, as it ran, basically was driven by employer demand, without caps, without a lot of oversight, to be honest, and without thinking about how it fit into our immigration system. And now it's become a de facto immigration program, and that's not what it was originally designed to do. And so, of course, there's a level of incongruity there, and it means it doesn't always work. It was also based on a bunch of programs that were failed programs in other countries, like the Bracero program and guest worker programs in the United States that people already knew wouldn't fail or wouldn't work. And we still managed to model a program on those things.
So I just looked at, in a high-level way, the new immigration levels plan, which is by the end of 2026, to reduce that number to 5% of Canada's population, or about 2.5 million people. But how will that new immigration levels plan then affect the temporary foreign workers program?
One thing about the levels plan that's important, it's not just about numbers. I think that we get caught in the numbers, and certainly that's been the thing that people are paying most attention to. And I think what's going to do is basically create a number of changes to the temporary foreign worker program. So yes, they're going to reduce the numbers, but they're doing things like ensuring or tightening up eligibility requirements for the postgraduate permit. They're getting rid of some spousal permits. And it's going to create a scenario where there's a lot of people stuck without an access to a regular or documented pathway that are in Canada already. And so that's one of the challenges we're going to see going forward. And they're still not addressing the root problems of the program, which are things like compliance, things like ensuring that there's a pathway to permanent residency. Just lowering the numbers does nothing to change these long-standing problems, human rights, labor complaints, for example.
We hear a lot of different terms within these programs, including undocumented or irregular migrants. What do those labels mean for the people within the program?
Yes, a very academic or government speak, right?
Yes.
And there's also UN speak in there as well, which is fun. The undocumented migrants basically just refers to people that have no authorization, no documents. That's the idea. And in Canada, it refers mostly to people who have come in. Almost everybody that doesn't have documentation right now came in with documentation, came in with a legal status, as they would say, with a document saying they were allowed to legally work in Canada, for example, but it expired and there wasn't a chance for them to try to get access to a different status, or they tried to get access to a different status and for some reason it didn't work. Sometimes administration errors, sometimes because they don't have the right proof, sometimes because they made a mistake, sometimes because they're not eligible, etc. And they find themselves without status. Irregular migrants is a term often used at the UN level and the IOM, and it's basically more about people who have moved without moving in a regular channel, but they're often used anonymously.
You made reference earlier, Jenna, to the agriculture sector as one specifically where temporary foreign workers have been really important to the Canadian economy. Service, care sectors would be others where I think we see these workers providing great value. But when these work permits of an estimated 1.2 million people expire next year, then what?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is there's different sort of sub-programs operating in each of these, in some of these sectors, and so it's hard to get a handle on because they're a little bit different in how they pan out. But the truth is, we know we've depended on these workers to prop up our economy. We saw it during COVID, for example. We've seen it since. We've seen it for decades in agriculture, that's for sure. And without ensuring that they can stay and continue to work, I think we're going to see a huge challenge. We're either going to see people staying and working basically undocumented. That means without legal protection, without being able to work in a way that ensures their rights are protected. They won't be necessarily into all of the access to the systems that they need, including paying taxes, right? And those that are here on work permits pay taxes, and so that's a huge problem. And the others, and the assumption by the federal government right now is that they're going to leave. That when their work permits are up, they're going to leave. And history tells us the opposite of that. Evidence tells us the opposite of that. Unless you actually support or push for deportation or removals or returns, that's not going to happen. The majority of people will stay, and then we're going to have a really big challenge because we'll have a bunch of people without the same access to rights and services as everyone else, and that'll be a huge problem going forward.
I feel like we're kind of stuck between the proverbial rock and hard place here as we try to rein in or repair our immigration system while also running the risk of losing these really important workers in the economy.
Yeah, totally. And they've been here, they've been working, they've effectively all integrated to some extent, right? They've come, they've been working, they've made networks and friends and families, they've been trained by employers. And for us to sort of ignore that is absurd, actually, because it means that their skills they've acquired, the networks, the human capital they've developed while they're here is just going to leave with them, and we have to start again. And so it isn't a really a smart way of governing, I would say, and it's a way of not repairing this system. And this is what I've been saying for more than a decade now, is the temporary migration system has not been aligned with the goals of our immigration system. And we need to think about how they work together in a way that is about ensuring that our communities have the people in them that can work, because as we have an aging population, our population is declining, we depend on immigration. Why not ensure that we can take advantage of the time and effort that people have already put in to come here and ensure that they can have access to full rights like everyone else?
Excellent point and great argument to support a really important conversation today. Jenna, thanks very much for joining the show.
Thanks so much for the time and attention, and I wish you luck in the rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Dr. Jenna Hennebree is a professor at the International Migration Research Center at Wilfrid Laurier University. It really caught my ear when she said towards the end of that conversation that she's been saying this for more than a decade now. Doesn't it make you wonder which experts were consulted when these programs were implemented, when they get modified, when they're created? There are always different points of view. Of course there are. But in hindsight, what Jenna Hennebree just brings to the show this morning sounds like, right, if we had only listened a decade ago, we'd be in a far different place today. It makes me think of a lot of different things, including something that I heard while listening to Ian McLean and Greg DeRocher on Business to Business this weekend on 570 News Radio. So I'll get into that and would love to hear your thoughts too on how we untangle this web that's been created around the temporary foreign worker program and combining that with our new immigration limits, which really is just putting the focus on immigration bad, right? Well, no, there are areas of our economy that absolutely need this. So how are we going to continue to fill those necessary jobs in our labor force while also keeping in mind these new immigration limits? It can't be strictly about the numbers. There has to be some meaningful thought put into this. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
We're either going to see people staying and working basically undocumented. That means without legal protection, without being able to work in a way that ensures their rights are protected. And the assumption is the federal government right now is that they're going to leave, that when their work permits are up, they're going to leave. And history tells us the opposite of that. Evidence tells us the opposite of that.
And yet, in the face of what evidence tells us, we just assume that, yes, these 1.2 million people, when their work permits expire in the year ahead, they will just leave. Dr. Jenna Hennebree is a professor in the International Migration Research Center at Wilfrid Laurier University, and she says she's been banging on this drum for the better part of a decade now, and unfortunately, what she feared has come to pass. And look, there are a couple of important things to consider in all of this. One is that the temporary foreign worker program fills necessary gaps in our labor force, particularly in the agriculture, service, and care, like PSW's sector. There's that happening, and it's important. The other thing that we must remember when we talk about immigration and immigration levels is that we are not repopulating ourselves quickly enough to make up for all of the workers needed versus all of the retirements being taken. The math simply doesn't work in that regard. I was listening yesterday to Greg DeRocher and Ian McLean, the leaders of our chambers of commerce in Kitchener-Waterloo and Cambridge, and they were talking about our community and its growth towards 1 million people and the new hospital that is going to be built in Waterloo, right on the University of Waterloo campus. As you well know, Barringer Road and Westmount area-ish. That's where the new hospital is going to go. We haven't had a new hospital in this community built in the past 60 years. And all this means really is that we're starting to put in place the required infrastructure for us as we grow to 1 million people. But that's what has to be happening now. Again, consider it's been 6 decades since a hospital was built in this region. Now we're talking about our rapid acceleration of population towards 1 million people in the next 25 to 30 years. What are we doing today to ensure that we are ready? In various ways, a hospital being one of them. Dare I say it, and we're going to be talking more about it in about 10 minutes' time, but industrial land assemblies, the likes of which is happening in Wilmot, doesn't necessarily have to be that land assembly, but we are going to need places to create employment so that we have the jobs to support the rapidly growing population. And these have to be good jobs. Not everybody is going to end up driving an Uber for either people or food, right? So there is a lot to consider here. And what seems to have happened is that we didn't think far enough ahead when we put these programs in place. And I'll go back to what Jenna said when she mentioned having been beating this drum for a decade now. It just makes me wonder what expert advice was sought when programs were first put in place. Many have said the temporary foreign worker program was doomed to fail from the get-go. Now we add the new immigration limits to the equation, and you're taking a program that was already failing and making a bigger mess of it. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio. Well, suddenly I can't decide which is the bigger headline. I have breakfast television on in the studio on my monitor. And as I'm still trying to digest the news that we learned just after the show began this morning, minutes after we began the show, we learned that Federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has resigned from her position in cabinet. As she writes in her letter, Prime Minister Trudeau asked her on Friday if she would step down from the finance minister's role and accept another role in cabinet. She said, no, I'm just resigning from cabinet effective immediately, but she will still seek re-election in her Toronto riding in the next federal election. So that's one big headline from this morning. But what Breakfast Television just told me moments ago is that Bo Bichette got a haircut. The Blue Jays shortstop has had it. Like, now what do we take as our big headline for a Monday morning? The finance minister stepping down, not to mention on the day that she's to deliver the fall economic statement, or Bo Bichette getting a haircut? Look, I know a couple of things. First of all, in the big picture, the far more important story is the finance minister stepping down. But you know what? Especially at this time of year, sometimes we don't want to think about the big, heavy stories. And so Bo Bichette's haircut may well be newsworthy. I can only hope that it improves his defense on the field and maybe gets his hitting back, because a couple of seasons ago, the guy seemed to hit everything that was thrown his way. Not so much this past season. I had a high school principal back in the day, so I admit I come at this from an old school, no pun intended, but it seems appropriate here, this old school mentality. But he visibly bristled at any person who did anything. And I guess that's why in a school where there was a uniform that we wore, but if you drew extra attention to yourself, this principal had very little time for that. And it always seemed to me that Bo's hair was an entity unto itself. So maybe the less attention he's drawing to himself, the better a teammate he becomes. I don't know, but it's a little lesson I took away from my high school principal back in the day. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio. You have no doubt heard that Wilmot Township is toying with a proposed 51% property tax increase. That's what the draft budget states. Councillors have reacted, and the mayor of the township, Natasha Salonen, as you might expect them to, with a decent amount of sticker shock, and then an expression of confidence that they will work to get this number down. How much further down do you come from 51%? And is there an underlying message here that what Wilmot Township really needs is a way to increase its tax roll, by creating an industrial mega site and the jobs that would come with it? Alfred Lowrick is a spokesperson with Fight for Farmland in Wilmot Township and joins the program. Alfred, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing all right, thanks. How about you?
I'm great.
Good.
Complain. Yeah.
Well, as great, I guess, as one can be when they hear about a proposed 51% tax increase in the township of Wilmot. Where do you think a number like that comes from, Alfred?
I think a lot of it's been put together by staff. They're obviously looking at all their wish list and putting it out, and it sounds like they've justified a lot of it. And there's a lot of mistakes that are preloading some of the documents or the costs. Those things have to be addressed, and I'm sure council and the mayor will bring that number down to something that's somewhat reasonable. But the reason I wanted to talk to you this morning was just the rumors that we, at Fight for Farmland, heard that it was just along the lines of what you just said, is that we've had people saying, yeah, we need an industrial development, and that way it'll solve all the problems. And this isn't come from the 51% increase doesn't come from just this. This won't be the golden goose. It comes from decades of bad financial management. The Wilmot Land Assembly is only 9 months old. I can't believe it's already been 9 months, but it is what it is. I'm going to leave the blame game to the current officials to sort out. They've done some due diligence on that already. One of the councillors had a meeting on Saturday, and I was proposing some data. I wasn't able to go to it, but I understand there were a lot of people. We had over 200 people in St. Agatha that met with one of the councillors, Chris Wilkinson, and let him know what they thought about the circumstances. Anyway, it's not, like I said, it's not the golden goose. There'll be a lot of things that'll be brought in, and the number will be reduced. What we have found is that there hasn't been any financial analysis done on what this could create, jobs. The Land Assembly has moved ahead without any public meetings to demonstrate anything that any financial or social benefits to the community or the region. Our elected officials remain silent under the non-disclosure agreements, and really not providing any meaningful information. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Alfred, but I guess one of the other things with this too is even if we were to think that an industrial mega site would benefit the township's tax roll, which to some degree it absolutely would, but it's not like it's going to happen overnight. It's not going to suddenly appear tomorrow.
That's correct. Something like this is a number of years down the road. We look at St. Thomas as an example. They're leveling the land, and it's been over a year now that they're preparing for the Volkswagen plant, and it's going to be years before that operation is running, if it ever gets running, because of all the changes in the EV market that are to come. A lot of this there's infrastructure bills that have to take into account new highways, new roads, new rail, water, sewage. All those things haven't really been addressed, and how that's all going to come together. All we've been told is there's an industrial site, they're acquiring land, and that all that is to come. That doesn't cut it. All that information should be in detailed reports to public meetings, and so that the government can to move ahead with the consent of the governed.
Has there been any progress on the attempts to assemble this land, Alfred? Last we heard, the region had gathered about 1/3 of it, but the landowners were holding firm. Has there been any change to that?
Nothing has changed. The government, the region in this case, hasn't really negotiated in any way. They've reset the offers that was about a month ago now that we've heard. It's been totally silent. My gut on this tells me that we're simply waiting for the election, the provincial election, to come and go before they can act on it, which would be a terrible situation, because all this does is kick it down the road again, and causes a lot of angst with the farmers and the community in general. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but nothing has changed from an offer perspective, negotiation perspective. They are significantly far apart, and the farmers truly don't want to sell.
So the mantra of not a willing host remains just that. That is absolutely what Fight for Farmland is saying. Yeah,
it's not just the farms and the Farmland group, and it's the community. And what we've seen in the last little while is that there's a groundswell of activity that people within Wilmot, New Hamburg, Baden, St. Agatha, etc., are starting to wake up to this and are looking at it and saying, we want to get involved. This is not just the farming community, Nafsinger and Bleems. It's going to affect a lot of the Morningside division, and the cities, the towns of New Hamburg and Baden. So to that end, a group of us met, started up another group, if you will, that has a bigger focus on, and are going to be looking at things in a different way. And hopefully that has kicked off, and a number of people are interested in it. It'll be separate from Fight for Farmland, because it was viewed as a limiting factor, that it's only an agricultural thing. This is more than that. This is an effect on community, and that is new energies and new people are coming into the play.
Alfred, I appreciate your time on the show this morning, as always. Thank you very much for being here.
Okay, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. You too. Bye-bye. Alfred Lowrick is a spokesperson with Fight for Farmland. They expressed late last week that, hang on a second, don't be confused by this 51% tax increase. It's not as though there is a silver bullet in an industrial megasite, 770-acre land assembly that will address all of these financial concerns. Fight for Farmland says this financial situation is the result of mismanagement previously. And even if, look, we know that an industrial megasite would benefit the tax roll in the township, but it's certainly not going to do that overnight. You heard Alfred make reference to the town hall meeting that was held this past Saturday at the St. Agatha Community Centre. There is another coming up in a couple weeks' time on Thursday, January the 2nd at the Wilmot Recreation Centre in Baden. So keep your ears and eyes peeled for that. But there is continuing conversation around and a reminder from the Fight for Farmland folks that the township of Wilmot, at least from the community's perspective, is not a willing host for this industrial megasite. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
It's not the golden goose. What we have found is that there hasn't been any financial analysis done on what this could create jobs. The Land Assembly has moved ahead without any public meetings to demonstrate anything, that any financial or social benefits to the community or the region. Our elected officials remain silent under non-disclosure agreements and really not providing any meaningful information.
Alfred Lowrick is a spokesperson for Fight for Farmland. He wanted to address the rumors around the idea that this 51% proposed tax increase in Wilmot Township could be solved by the creation of a 770-acre industrial megasite. Look, there's no question that such a site would benefit the tax roll in the township. Does it benefit that tax roll overnight? Absolutely not. I feel for the folks in the township who are kind of waiting with bated breath now as we head towards a provincial election in the early part of 2025. Of that, I am almost certain, because they figure that election will trigger the continued aggressive approach, I guess, to getting that land assembled in Wilmot Township. Interesting times right here in our community and politically, of course, provincially and federally, with the news today that Chrystia Freeland has resigned as our federal finance minister. On the same day she's to deliver the fall economic statement, she says costly political gimmicks have no place right now. This is a serious situation. On another note, if you were listening on Friday, thank you. Appreciate your loyalty and your constant listenership. I had suggested to you that, I told you we had reached out to Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region to talk about the school bus cancellations that we have had already this season, if you will. It's not even officially winter. 3 times the buses have been canceled. On 2 of those occasions, I personally disagreed with the decision, but I don't make the decision. I'm allowed to disagree with it, and I have. And it's funny, I was receiving messages through the day yesterday as it began snowing here. I was in London in a hockey arena. It only rained there. We had snow here, and there was the chance of or threat of freezing rain developing overnight before it turned to rain, and we go up to our high of 5 degrees today. But I was getting messages saying, do you think they've canceled the school buses already? That, of course, did not happen, although in neighboring townships, Middlesex and Oxford, to be exact, morning school buses had to be canceled today due to fog. Again, that's outside of the region in nearby Middlesex and Oxford counties. But unfortunately, our efforts to get someone from Student Transportation Services of Waterloo Region to come on the show were unsuccessful. However, Student Transportation Services does have posted to its website an explanatory video trying to help us better understand what goes into the decision to cancel school buses when that happens. And here's a bit of it so we can have that sense. If you haven't seen the video online, you can hear parts of it right here.
Safety is behind all decisions, and it is important to understand that transportation cancellation and or school closures are not the decision of a single school board or school. And ultimately, parents have the final decision when it comes to the safety of their children. The decision to keep schools open or closed or cancel transportation in some or all areas is a process that involves many factors and many people. We review current weather forecasts from Environment Canada. So we hear there's a storm brewing. Now what? Transportation informs school bus operators and spotters across the region so they can get ready to report weather and roads conditions. It is important to remember that the conditions on bus routes can vary across our large region. The weather may look fine and the roads safe in your area, but it could be less safe for travel on nearby routes. Our goal is to make a well-informed decision in the morning for the entire day. If we know that poor weather is on the way and that traveling home after school may be unsafe, transportation for the entire day is canceled. Our decisions are based on the information we receive from many sources, but it is important to remember that ultimately it is up to the parent to decide whether or not they feel it is safe to send their child to school if transportation is operating.
That gives you an idea of how the decisions are made. Couple of takeaways. Right near the end of that for the second time in just a 69-second piece of audio. The reminder that it's up to parents. Even if the buses are running, it's up to parents to decide if they feel it's a safe enough journey for their child to make. I think that's worth noting. It comes up twice in just that 69 seconds. The other thing, of course, that goes into this is, or that we're reminded of in this, is that it's not a lone individual sitting at a desk somewhere making this decision on their own. It's not one school board. It's not one person at Student Transportation Services, etc. It is a collective decision made. So we can't point the finger of blame at one person or one entity. But the point made repeatedly about parents having the final say or making the final decision as to what they believe is safe enough for their child speaks directly to me of the liability that we know is a concern in all of this, right? If something goes sideways, nobody wants to be on the receiving end of a lawsuit. It's one of the biggest factors, I believe, in our decisions, and they sometimes seem rather snap or knee-jerk to cancel school buses when the weather gets a little less than ideal. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio. Just ahead of an update from the 570 News Center, let's go to the phones, hear from you. Doug, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I used to have a job driving a 5-ton straight truck for a private carrier that was carrying mail. It was hired privately, and I would take mail to several towns in the morning, go back out in the afternoon, and go pick up their mail and bring it back to the plant out to by where Bud's used to be. I was coming back into Guelph, out in the rural area. It was very, very foggy, so I was driving at a slower speed, and instantly, without any warning, without even being able to see, I was aimed at the center of a school bus. And as it completely turned, I just whizzed by, barely missing the rear end. I didn't have time to put on brakes. I didn't see this thing. And what else is that school driver supposed to do? From that point on, I always wished that I could make a statement to somebody so this wouldn't happen. I came within a millisecond to killing some children.
Well, I'm glad it turned out the way that it did. And I guess what Doug is saying is the more we cancel the school buses, the better, because he doesn't want that on his conscience, for sure. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570. Well, I was telling you earlier that, oddly, in London, the weather was better than we had here yesterday. Usually it's the other way around. London is much more into that snow belt, and they tend to get more wintry weather than we do here in the region of Waterloo. But such was not the case yesterday. All we had in London, where I was for the Rangers game, was rain. By the time we got back home to Kitchener, there was snow everywhere. I had to clean off the car by the time I got back. And when I got home, my beloved, being the beloved that she is, had already cleared the snow from the driveway and the sidewalk and the porch, etc. It's all going to melt now again today as we get a little bit milder. But the point is, 'tis the season for snow shoveling. And that can come with some degree of risk, because it's not just pushing around a lawnmower, right? Bending, lifting, straining oneself. Al Kawash is the director of the cardiac program and critical care at St. Mary's General Hospital and Grand River Hospital, and joins us to talk about it. Al, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here, because I don't think it's something that we necessarily think about when we pick up that shovel for the first time every year and get out there and attack the snow that has fallen. What should we be keeping in mind as we begin the winter chore?
Oh, what a great subject, Mike. So each snowfall, we see more and more patients with chest pain or heart attack in our emergency departments. And I asked the question, would we throw on a pair of runners and tackle a 10K without training? And yet, we see the snow settles in our driveways, sidewalks, and vehicles. Grab a shovel, we head out and do strenuous, repetitive exercises in the cold. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure rises, blood vessels might constrict. In the end, we're setting ourselves up for a heart attack, sprains, strains, and other health implications. But, the snow doesn't have to spell doom and gloom. There are a bunch of steps we can do to take to help ourselves and our loved ones stay healthy and strong all winter. So there's just a few things. One, stretch. Don't just bundle up. Grab your tool of choice and jump to it. Take a moment to stretch your arms, chest, and back before digging in. Shift. Tackle small sections and take rest in between. Shoveling in shifts. Reduce your stress on your heart muscles and joints. Size. While you're using a smaller shovel, it might seem counterintuitive, but it helps ensure that you have the stamina to complete the job. Smaller, lighter loads help further reduce strain and help improve that stamina. And by now, we know, stop smoking. We all know the health impacts of smoking and vaping. Stopping smoking significantly improves heart health and circulation. And lastly, signs. Know the signs of a heart attack: chest tightness, lightheadedness, dizziness. If you suspect you or a loved one are experiencing a heart attack, please call 911.
I love the way you put that at the outset. Would we, go out and run a 10K without any prior training, stretching, warm up, anything like that, especially on a cold winter's day? It's a good thing for us to remember. And you touched on it as well. If we are out and we're in the midst of shoveling, what should we be paying attention to just in case it's a sign of a problem?
Again, I go back to the signs of chest tightness, lightheadedness, dizziness. If you're experiencing those, those could be signs of a heart attack. But again, being proactive, stretching, taking shifts, watching the size. Don't twist. Let's always lift with your legs and put that snow closer to you, okay? Because you want to make sure that you're not lifting so heavy and then taking that snow and twisting with it. That could cause a significant back injury.
This gives us an opportunity to not only have a reminder as the snowy season is upon us, Al, but also maybe to consider what we could or should be doing for our heart health all year long, even in the other 3 seasons.
Absolutely. Here at St. Mary's, we have something called the Prevent Clinic, and this is for patients that are unattached or, don't have a family doctor. And age, blood pressure, cholesterol, weight, stress, and family history of heart attacks combine to really increase your risk for exercise-induced heart attack. And like it or not, shoveling is an exercise, and so we need to be aware of what we're doing. And there's a lot of things that we can do to keep our hearts healthy and prevent heart disease. Some of that is moderate exercise, healthy eating, reducing stress, maintaining a healthy weight can all improve heart health. And our clinic is powered by Manulife and is a multidisciplinary team that we work with patients to prevent cardiovascular disease. And we address the high cholesterol, the high blood pressure, the diabetes, or family history of early onset coronary disease in a first-degree relative. We're finding that a lot of people don't know that they have these conditions, and we have an opportunity here at St. Mary's to manage it and mitigate future complications or even death. This is only going to be helpful to the patient and the general health of our community.
Is this a time of year where you tend to meet more people, unfortunately, who have overdone it and strained themselves?
Always. This is a peak time for us here in our ED when people present where they overexert, whether it's chest pain or they've strained their back or their leg muscles because they've improperly shoveled their driveway on a day like yesterday, for example. That snow was heavy.
Yeah, you know what? The first snow we had, there was a lot of it, but it was much lighter. You're right. That heavier stuff, it doesn't look like too much, but it can catch you in a hurry.
Absolutely.
Al, really appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thanks for sharing this important information with us.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, Mike.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Al Kawash is a director in the cardiac program and critical care at St. Mary's General Hospital and Grand River Hospital. Look, let's just be honest, okay? Not the guy you want to meet this winter or anytime, really. If you can help it, there are some things that we can do, and you heard Al outline them to take care of our heart health year-round. And when it comes to being that winter warrior and getting out there and being a good neighbor, shoveling your walk and the walk next door, make sure you are doing it in a manner that protects your heart health. And watch for those signs. dizziness, lightheadedness, strain, or a tightness in your chest that might be indicative of a heart attack as you're trying to clear all that snow. We're going to take a break. When we come back, it was a big weekend at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium. Not only did the KW Titans pick up a big win, but there was also an announcement made. The Titans family is growing here in our sports community. That conversation coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio. Got a chance to spend a Saturday afternoon at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium right in between Rangers games. The Rangers were home on Friday, on the road Sunday. And as we finished the game on Friday night at the Memorial Auditorium, they were laying down the floor because the Titans were taking over on Saturday afternoon. Big win over the Pontiac Pharaohs. Then it was off to Jamestown. Tough loss last night. But still, Titans off to a 3-2 start on the season. And very pleased to be joined in studio by the president and CEO, co-owner of the KW Titans, David Schooley, is with us. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. Coach Cliff is here. Nice to see you, Coach.
Nice to have. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
And assistant lead coach James Robinson is here as well. Nice to see you, James. Thanks for coming in.
Top of the morning. Nice to see you.
Coach Cliff, let's start with the start to the season for your KW Titans. I mean, 3-2 is not a bad way to get going, but what is it about this team that impresses you so far?
We've been working hard. Most importantly, we got a nice group of guys, 12 guys, good men on and off the court. They just been working hard, trying to build some chemistry, and we have a real chance of being a deep team, playing all 12 guys. I think that's the most important part.
James, what's it like playing in front of the crowd at the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium?
Electric.
Yeah.
Every game is electric. You come in, good time, the entertainment is good for the crowd, but also it's a great quality of basketball for the city.
Yeah. David, you knew this when you came on board as the new owner along with your wife, Kate, that the Titans provided. In fact, you got hooked when you saw a game yourself.
Right, yeah. Season one of the first sponsors, and haven't looked back, right? The thing about the Odd is there's no bad seats. But if I can get you down courtside for just one game, you're hooked. If you've never been to a basketball game, like I had never been to a basketball game, you'll be hooked.
Yeah. What's that like for you guys? Because you're doing your job, right? And I see, James, I see you laughing already. I wonder about this, though, because I'm mostly a hockey guy, and the coaches are somewhat insulated from the fans. Coach Cliff, what's this like? You're trying to do your job, and there's somebody, a fan, paid money, sit right next to you.
I love it. I mean, I think it gives them a good insight on the game. They can hear a lot from the players, from the coaches, a lot of talking, a lot of communication. And if you playing the right style of basketball, you could get your crowd behind us. And it's a real thing, like having a sixth man. When you're playing good basketball, you get the crowd hype, and that's the best part about it.
There's no other sport like it.
Absolutely
right?
not.
Where you can be right there.
Yeah.
You can be right there, high-fiving the guys as they're coming off the court.
Absolutely. Yeah. James, in your career, you ever gotten into it with a fan?
No.
No?
Nah,
you're
not
too,
really
You're
into
too
it.
calm for that, eh?
No, we're not in London.
Nah, it's more so just passion, that's all. Like, into it, if you look at it, it might seem like we get into it, but no, it's basketball to all. We love what we do. So you got to love your job. You just at work talking this competitiveness, even at away games, you might have some fans chirping here and there, but even after the games, they'll give us a high five. We love when you guys come in. We get that a lot. So, there's never nothing into it.
That's great. I love to hear it. David, it was a big day on Saturday as well at the Memorial Auditorium. You and Kate welcomed some new members to the Titans family. You had Sam, Nassim, and Shanif Harani, who have come on board with you at the KW Titans, and you're wrapping your arms around the Kitchener Panthers as well.
105-year baseball team. We are very excited about that. So it's so funny. I was listening to your show, and I think Mike Beamer was on when they were making the announcement about the Panthers. And before the end of the day, I had a couple of people that had reached out and said, "Hey, are you thinking about this?" In the interim, I texted my good friend Sam Harani, who I've known for 25 years, because I know they're a baseball family. Right? Shanif came all the way up through the Panthers organization, played he on a scholarship in the U.S. Baseball, and then went to Columbia and got his master's in sports management. And I sent him a fun text and said, hey, do you want to buy the Panthers? And here we are today, right? I think they had 20-some groups looking at it, and the board looked at our proposal and our group and felt that we were best suited for the next 105 years.
So this makes it now Waterloo Region Sports and Entertainment.
Yes.
The Titans, the Panthers, under the same umbrella. What was in your pitch that made it successful?
I think what the board looked at was our success in the Titans organization. We're already running a successful sports franchise, and then with the Huranis baseball background, I mean, they built Play Ball back, a dozen years ago, which was an indoor baseball facility where the Panthers actually practiced, and where Shanif, came up in the baseball organization, and they looked at the fit, and there were much more people looking. There were many groups, but they narrowed it down, and they unanimously picked us.
How does it feel?
We're excited. I'm excited about a lot of things. This will be a year-long endeavor. Our front office. This will take a load off of all of us, right? Because we have a full-time GM. Advertising for sponsors. Now you have almost a full year of sponsorship. Housing. A lot of things that a lot of people don't think about. Housing is one of our biggest challenges here in KW. It's, we're paying 2 to 3 times as much as any other team because we're casual, right? We can't rent houses for the year. So, there's going to be a lot of efficiencies built in. And, for sponsors, your sponsorship will go 12 months of the year. Social media, advertising, all of those things that just, now can be seamless. And sponsorships and season tickets, this is what we're excited about. We'll be able to be offering season tickets so you can start your season in November with the Titans and end in September with the Panthers. So we're going to have lots of really interesting options there.
That's 2 great sports properties in our region. Okay, let's get back to basketball. Coach Cliff, you got Jamestown coming now here on the weekend. What do you got to do to make up for the loss yesterday in Jamestown?
We just got to get back to the drawing board, get back to them practice. Everything for us starting practice, watch some film, correct some things that we need to be corrected to come play them Sunday. They're a tough team. They play with a different dynamic, a lot of pressure, so some things we just got to work on in practice and get better, watch film. And we also did some great things, right? So the main thing for us right now is we turning the ball over too much, right? So that going to catch up to you. So we got to correct that, and from there I think we'll be fine.
What would you say is the identity of this Titans basketball team?
It's going to be grit and toughness and togetherness. That's the main thing. And when you have those things every night, some things in basketball is non-negotiable, right? That's playing hard, playing the right way, and playing for your teammates. That's what we're going to preach every time.
I saw you nodding your head there, James, and I've seen you on the bench, too. Like, you're passionate about this. You get pretty fiery back there.
Yes, sir, I do. I love it. This is the game that gave me a purpose in life, So it's like I get the opportunity to kind of show that purpose and kind of show that passion and give it to guys to kind of help them elevate their career. There's no better feeling than that.
How do you feel about baseball being part of the portfolio now?
I like baseball. Baseball is fun to go watch. I can't really watch it on TV, but being at a baseball game is different. The atmosphere is different. So it's going to be good that you can go to a basketball game and you can walk out and see the baseball field and say, that's next. But then at least for that, we could just be spectators, So that takes a load off of us.
We might have a few spots on the team.
Oh, man.
And real quick, David, because we've got about 60 seconds, but this Sunday's game, also collecting toys again for Knights of Columbus.
Toy drive. And then don't forget, we have a game on the 27th. We have a game on the 29th, and we have a game on January 2nd. So come on out. We got lots of home games, right? So when you think you're busy now, you're going to be bored on the 27th and need to come out to an exceptional game in your backyard. So
you know what? It's the holiday time. Bring the kids.
100%.
Great entertainment. David Schooley, Cliff Clinkscales, and James Robinson joining us in studio. Great to see you all. Keep up the good work and go Titans, go.
Thank you.
Tighten up.
Appreciate it.
Tighten up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. We all need a story just like this next one as the holidays approach. It's like a Christmas gift for the woman known as the Bike Lady in Guelph, and it's worth almost $2,000. We'll tell you what happened coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. Stay with us here on 570 News Radio. You may remember the story we told you earlier this year, several months ago. A woman in Guelph known as the Bike Lady, who from her home repaired bicycles and then did that and sold them for charity. Tens of thousands of dollars raised over the years, but somebody complained. That brought bylaw to the Bike Lady's house, and the next thing you know, she was facing sanctions from the city, including $1,900 that she had to pay to a committee of adjustment. But there is a happy ending to this story, and the Bike Lady herself, Mary Rife, joins us on the show this morning. Mary, it's good to talk to you again. Good morning.
Good to be back. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making the time. And I think the story is best heard directly from the person who it affected, and that's you. What happened here, Mary?
Well, because I was technically breaking a bylaw, I had to get a variance, and to even apply for a variance, it's $1,900, which there's no guarantee whether you get the variance or not. Fortunately, the Committee of Adjustment was very gracious, and they did grant me the variance so that I could continue doing what I was doing, but I was still out the $1,900. They did say that I could ask for a waiver, and between my son and I, we put in the application for a waiver of the fees to get the fees back. But the city staff said no. But there was a hearing last Thursday. I wasn't able to attend. My son attended for me. He spoke very well, saying that this money, this $1,900, would have gone to the Stephen Lewis Foundation, the charity that I support. And, that it was unfair that the charity would be out that much money. The Committee of Adjustment overruled the city staff and granted the waiver, which is almost unheard of. So it was the best Christmas present ever.
Indeed it is. Now, you said at the outset, technically, you were in contravention of a city bylaw in Guelph, and that's what began this whole ordeal for you. The thing is, Mary, you've been doing this for such a long time. So how did it all of a sudden come to pass that bylaw was getting involved?
Excuse me. All it took was one complaint. If somebody complains, like if my neighbor had a rotten couch on his lawn on display for weeks on end with vermin running through it, I would call bylaw and say, hey, look, this is, making the neighborhood go downhill real fast. So you call the bylaw comes out and said, oh no, you've got to do something about it. You got to clean it up, you'd be fined, whatever. And because I was having they called it a perpetual garage sale, which you're not allowed to have. But I mean, it wasn't out there all the time. I would bring it in at night, and there was days it was raining. Of course, I wouldn't have the bikes out on the lawn. So it was kind of a fine line between, was I breaking the law? Was I not breaking the law? Bylaw. So then the variance cleared that up. said that I was allowed to do it.
And the bikes being out on the lawn would be there for display purposes because you've repaired them and you're selling them now for charity. As you mentioned, the money going to the Stephen Lewis Foundation.
Correct, yeah.
How did this
and
all...
they'd only be out there a couple hours a day. It wouldn't be like I wouldn't have them out all day. I'd put them out maybe at noon and bring them back in at supper time. So they wouldn't be out there all day.
How did this all get started for you, Mary? Why did you begin doing this?
Well, probably because I'm a little crazy, but 14 years ago, my parents moved in with me. My mom had dementia, and my dad had broken his ankle, so he couldn't look after her. And when his ankle healed, he wanted to go back home, and my mom just cried, said, I can't handle it, and they ended up living with me. Well, my dad didn't have any signs of dementia, and he was bored to tears. And I said, Dad, you're a fixer. Just put a sign out saying, fix bikes. Just get out of my hair. And he did. We put a sign out saying bikes repaired, and he would be happy out there fixing bikes. And then one day somebody brought him a bike and just said, well, you can fix it, but I don't want it back. And my dad says, well, what am I going to do with it? And I said, just sell it, Dad. He goes, well, I don't need the money. And I said, give it to charity. That started it all. He did it for 9 years. And when he passed away, I had a garage full of bikes. And I thought, oh, I can do this too. But I did take a professional bike mechanics course at 68 years of age and passed it with flying colors. But the bikes have changed a lot, so I had to learn about disc brakes and all kinds of different things that aren't on old bikes. So, I just carried on, and it's become more and more popular in Guelph. Every single bike that I have is donated. I don't buy, I don't trade, I don't anything like that. Every bike is donated, and 100% goes to charity. So it's a win-win. People can get rid of their bikes that are sitting in their garage. Their kids move out, they go to university, they leave their bikes behind. Kids grow up, their old, smaller bikes get donated. And even some condominium managers tag their bikes once a year and say, if this is your bike, report it to the office. If it's not, it goes to Mary. So, this past year, I sold 297 bikes.
Holy Moses, 297 in a year. That's pretty brisk business. At the end of all of this, Mary, after what you've gone through, you mentioned best Christmas present ever, which I agree. I'm glad the city saw the light on this, so to speak. But
I don't think they've ever returned anybody's money, ever.
Unprecedented. You're breaking new ground here. Has it been worth it going through this entire ordeal?
Well, when I was going through it, I don't think it was. But the good thing was the support that I got. People were so angry that I would be shut down, and I never realized the support that I had. People wrote letters. The city received 120 emails in support, none against. Again, a record-breaking thing. They've never had that many emails supporting a variance. Just the outpouring of support from people was gratifying. Because sometimes when you do something like this, you're working on your own, and you just, you get a person or two that says thank you. But to get that much support, where people actually sat down, wrote emails to the city, it was very gratifying to know that I was that appreciated.
Mary, I certainly appreciate your time on the show this morning. Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining us.
All right, thank you.
Mary Rife is the bike lady in Guelph, and she never was going to go out of business. I was thinking for a moment to say she's back in business. She wasn't going to go out of business. And she took it as far as she needed to take it to obtain this variance, including paying the $1,900, which a staff report recommended not be returned to her, but a committee of adjustment saw it another way and has returned the $1,900 to her because it's money for charity. And to whomever issued the original complaint that put poor Mary Rife through all of this, a pox on your house and a lump of coal in your stocking this holiday season. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio.
People wrote letters. I mean, the city received 120 emails in support, none against. Sometimes when you do something like this, you're working on your own and you just, you get a person or two that says thank you. But to get that much support where people actually sat down, wrote emails to the city, it was very gratifying to know that I was that appreciated.
Can we just take a lesson from this story as municipalities and as neighbors as well? The voice you just heard is that of Mary Rife, who's known as the bike lady in Guelph. And for many years, following in her father's footsteps, Mary has repaired bicycles, refurbished them to prepare them for sale, but not for profit. Well, unless you call the charitable contribution the profit for the charity. But she has raised over the years more than $100,000 for the Stephen Lewis Foundation. And sometime recently, someone issued a complaint to the city. Mary doesn't believe it was anybody that lived nearby her home in Guelph, because people nearby her home in Guelph wrote letters, scores of letters, more than 120 letters in support of her being allowed to continue the work that she does. Now, picture it, okay? And I get that in a fleeting moment, you might consider this to be odd. As Mary said, it's almost as though she's in a state of perpetual garage sale, right? Because sometime around midday, the bikes get wheeled out of the garage and set up out front so people can see them and maybe find a bike they'd like to buy for somebody in the family or for themselves, whatever. And then around dinner time, back into the garage they go. Depending on the number of bikes and the way they're arranged and maybe their condition, it might look a little bit, I don't know, less than ideal in the neighborhood. So somebody sees it and issues the complaint. The first thing that comes to mind for me in this is when the bylaw officer shows up and Mary explains to that officer exactly what's going on and that these bikes aren't like, vehicles on cinder blocks sitting on a front lawn forever and ever, amen. That should have been the end of it, in my opinion. I don't know why this particular bylaw officer on this particular day decided to enforce the exact letter of the law and take this to the extent that it was taken. So that's lesson number one. I hope we as municipalities can take something away from this. I mean, my goodness gracious, a charitable endeavor from an individual getting to this length is stupefying from where I'm sitting. So in order to continue doing what she wanted to do, which is repair bikes for charity, Mary Rife, the bike lady of Guelph, has to apply for a variance which costs her $1,900. And wouldn't you know that the person who issued the complaint didn't even have the guts to show up to the committee meeting, which should in and of itself end the process right there. No further punishment required to the bike lady, right? If the person who issued the complaint doesn't even have the courage to show up to the meeting, that's it then. The complaint is null and void. Another lesson perhaps for municipalities in this entire process. But for us as neighbors, I mean, come on with your coming on here. What harm is somebody doing when they are repairing their bikes on their property to sell for charity? How is that so negatively impacting your life? So maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson here for us as neighbors in Guelph and elsewhere that we could just take a breath before calling bylaw and sicking them on our neighbor who is undertaking a charitable endeavor. I'm glad that the story has the happy ending that it has. As Mary said, It's like the best Christmas present ever. $1,900 is not being taken away from the charity, and she will continue to do her work from her home in Guelph, as it should be. It took us too darn long to get here, but we got here. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio. Have to send a huge shout out and a bunch of love to my friends Doug and Sandra Ranton. Doug and Sandra lost their son, Jacob, to suicide more than 10 years ago now. And he was a student athlete when he was in high school here in the region, and he moved down east for post-secondary, where he continued his basketball career. And it was a sudden, certainly unexpected and tragic loss for the Ranton family. I met Doug and Sandra many years ago as they organized the annual Jacob Ranton Memorial Basketball Tournament in support of the Waterloo Region Suicide Prevention Council. And this year, they wrapped up just this weekend their 10th annual tournament, having raised already more than $420,000. And it sounds as though this year they're going to put about $55,000 more into the bank. So make it $475,000 plus, raised by the Rantons through the annual Jacob Ranton Memorial Basketball Tournament. 10 years strong. Doug and Sandra have announced they're moving on from the tournament now. This was to be the final one, but $55,000 plus raised this weekend. Just an incredible testament to the human spirit, the love they had and still have for their son Jacob, and what a way to make a little bit of lemonade out of some pretty serious lemons. So congratulations to Doug, Sandra, and everybody involved with the annual Jacob Ranton Memorial Basketball Tournament. $55,000 raised this year on top of the more than $420,000 already raised in support of the Waterloo Region Suicide Prevention Council. It's just a fantastic and heartwarming story. They deserve all the love and all the shout-outs as we head to the holiday season. All right. In our immediate future, we are heading to the 570 News Center for an update. And then, this being Monday, that means our friend David Drewe joins us for Drewe's Views. And could there have been any bigger news earlier today than the announcement from Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland that she was resigning from her role in the federal cabinet? She was offered a different role, but she has taken a different approach. No, thank you. If you don't want me to be your finance minister, I am not going to remain in cabinet. And Ms. Freeland took her share of shots at the Prime Minister on her way out the door. We'll get Drew's views on that coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Now, that cat couldn't spell to win a bet, but he carried this battered notebook full of his poetry. More soul per square word than the Lord's Prayer. He was the kind of guy that called a spade a shovel, and a violin a fiddle, and a lady ma'am. And I don't even know why I think of him now. Maybe because he never told me a lie he'd have to apologize for later. Because he'd speak to a guy straight, eyeball to bloodshot eyeball, like he'd never even had a secret.
David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. He joins us every Monday morning at this time for Drew's Views. And could there be a better time to have the longtime on the Hill Conservative Party staffer in the room with us than a day like today, when Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland drops a Monday morning news bomb on us and says, I'm out. That's it. I resign from my post in cabinet.
So I used to send you my show notes on Sunday nights.
You did.
And then too often I would wake up on Monday morning and send you revised ones or come into the studio and say, oh yeah, we got to talk about this now. So I've been sending them to you lately a little bit after business hours start on Monday, 9, 9:30, 10 at the worst. And I think it was 9:30 today I sent them to you, and a half hour after that boom, this dropped. So I don't know, Mike. I think I'm just going to start walking in here and doing it cold.
Could do that.
But in terms of this topic, the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Yeah, there's so much that is so interesting about this. Like, I don't know that there's a precedent for a finance minister resigning on the day of a budget or a mini budget, a financial economic statement. So they literally canceled the press lockup in Ottawa because they didn't know what was going on. Because who delivers the statement if there's no finance minister, and does some other person get appointed finance minister just to get up and read a speech that was already written and deliver a financial economic statement that they haven't even seen before? Because this is all subject to budget secrecy. There's very few people who know what's in the contents of stuff like this. So Cabinet doesn't know. So yeah, they just, all the little financial economic statement booklets are still in their sealed envelopes. You've seen the pictures of those from Ottawa. So don't know when we're going to get the financial economic statement. I don't know who's going to take her place tonight in Gatineau at the Liberal top donors dinner that she was scheduled to speak at. I mean, she's still an MP, so maybe she'll still go. But I was thinking, maybe we'll have to go to Britain, where the Parliament is a bit more crazy, to try and find a precedent for this. And then I just couldn't help thinking, this was a very British resignation. It was not so much, it's been a pleasure serving with you, sir. It's, no, I'm resigning on principle. We've accomplished so much together. You no longer have confidence in me. I look forward to running in the next election. There was just so much, and it was so perfect, because basically, she's made it clear. She's in one of the safest ridings for the Liberals in the country. If there's anyone going to survive this next election, it's probably Toronto Rosedale's member of Parliament. And she's made it clear, if I'm not on the ballot next election, it's because the man pushed me out. The very last line of her statement was, and I look forward to running in the next election. But as I said, before we got on the air, the last thing I'll say before I can throw it back to you is, what an idiot. What an idiot tells somebody on a Friday, I'm taking you out of your job, but on Monday, I'd still like you to deliver the $61 billion deficit statement that apparently you are against, and then I'm going to fire you and replace you with a man. Take the weekend to think about it. Who didn't see this coming, if you'd known?
No, but that strikes right at the heart of it for me, David. You're absolutely right. Justin Trudeau is getting in this exactly what he deserves. Goes to Chrystia Freeland on Friday, says, I'm removing you from the portfolio of finance, but I would like to offer you a different portfolio in cabinet. What did he expect would happen? And to your point, and by the way, don't forget to deliver that fall economic statement on Monday.
Well, and that's just it. We've been seeing over the past weeks, the leak war that went back and forth for a couple of days between the finance department and the Prime Minister's office, where finance was leaking about the tension between the two, and then the PMO's leaks were coming out and saying, yes, she does serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. She should remember that sort of thing. Prime Minister was asked directly, do you have confidence in your finance minister? And with a couple pregnant pauses, his answer was, I have confidence in Chrystia Freeland's abilities, which is not a yes, which you have to read a whole lot into if you are the finance minister. My big question is, what happens on the markets? It's not just that she was the hand on the wheel of the spending for the last 5 years now, but she has now positioned herself as the fiscal hawk in the conversation between the two. And, she was the only person we thought at the time who could replace Bill Morneau without the markets being hit. Who does he replace? Who has replace her with her credibility? I have no idea.
The Mark Carney era has unofficially begun. Yes?
I think it unofficially began a while ago when he took that job as the leader of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Group, reporting to the Liberal Prime Minister, or the leader of the Liberal Party, not the Prime Minister. So that way he can access all the intelligence without having to divest himself from his investments. So good on him. But, geez, if you're Mark Carney and you were slated for finance, do you want it now? Your goal is...
No, he wants it.
Oh, he wants it, but to be the guy who pushed Chrystia Freeland out to get it, that is not your way to the Liberal leadership, which is his real goal. Or, no, that's his ticket to his real goal, which is Prime Minister. No diss on that, but if your first step is elbowing a woman out of the way, it's not a good lead. And then if he goes anywhere else, the question is, why not finance? So, and then the last question is, does he really want to be associated with this government? Is it better for him to be an outsider or to come in right now? Because if he comes in right now as finance minister, why would Justin Trudeau listen to him if not to Freeland? Like, this is just a very, very expensive way to get to the same place you were going to go anyway. So there's so many reasons for Mark Carney to be maybe not now. I don't know.
Okay. Before we take a break, do we need, and because to your point earlier about the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Times were interesting even before this drama began to unfold, because we have an incoming U.S. president that is threatening all kinds of financial harm on us through tariffs, etc. Do we need an election in this country, David, to deal with all of the things?
Well, my inclination is to say yes, just so whoever wins has a longer mandate and hopefully a mandate from the people to act in a certain way that they can take to the negotiations. But that is risky. I mean, if we go to an election right now, 28 days, I believe, don't quote me on this, is the minimum length of the campaign. So 4 weeks. If Justin Trudeau was to call it on Wednesday, we'd be having a January election. So our prime minister would be getting elected on the day that Trump took office. So we would have, let's assume Pierre Poilievre's going to win. I'm not cheerleading him, but I am reading the polls. He would have a very quick transition and a lot of ministers to onboard to be rookies. And we're going to have to go through that unless the polls change at some point. And so I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, now would be better because we're going to go through this pain at some point anyway. But there is a risk to having a big vacuum at the top while, who flies to Mar-a-Lago to talk Trump down from his next tweet if we're in an election. So I say, yeah, we should go. But I don't say that with a whole lot of confidence. I'd be really willing to listen to people who would give me a non-partisan argument as to why we shouldn't. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking we got to get this Band-Aid off sooner or later, and sooner's better.
David Drewe is the owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations, Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. He joins us every Monday morning at 11:30 here on the Mike Farwell Show. We continue the conversation on 570 News Radio. David Drewe joins us every Monday morning at 11:30. Drewe's Views is the name of the segment. David owns Negotiating Change, a company that focuses on government relations, stakeholder engagement strategies. And David spent time on Parliament Hill. He was a staffer within the ranks of the Federal Conservative Party. We are in the most interesting times I can certainly remember. And David, it sounds like Chrystia Freeland surprising us today, but following the lead of Sean Fraser when news broke yesterday that he was going to resign from cabinet and not run again. Freeland will run again, but Fraser says no, citing family reasons. And apparently there are only two of maybe a half dozen by the end of this week in total cabinet ministers that are disappearing from the federal Liberal cabinet.
I believe I saw a number that 4 more are planning resigning this week, including Philomena Tassi, who's economic development for Southwestern Ontario. I'm sure your listeners are going, oh, you didn't need to tell us that. We knew her. I'm kidding. But that's just it. These resignations, I mean, they're significant in that they're happening, but you drop these names and it's not the household names of a Chrystia Freeland or a Sean Fraser. But I don't know how many members, like we had Seamus O'Regan Jr. Sorry, I want to call him Jr. because that's a sign of respect to him. Who was the other one? There was another big minister who resigned earlier this spring. A lot of cabinet ministers are realizing that stuff is baked in as of last summer. And I don't want to mock again the idea that they're spending time with their families. But your families become a whole lot more attractive when you're going to be spending the next few years in opposition if you have your seat at all. And you never hear about anybody running to say, I'm running so I can spend less time with my family. It never happens. But it's never a good sign when you have 4 more this week. And we're at the time, a decade in. People who've been there for 10 years should be tired. But it looks horrible. It's natural, but it looks horrible.
It is wild what we are seeing happen. The implosion of the federal Liberal Party right before our very eyes. Okay, let's get into federalism a little bit, or at least look at one of the premiers, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, who has rankled you.
Oh, it's not even, sorry, I said, the notes say more premiers, more problems, but it's really more premiers, more problems. The war of words between Doug Ford and Scott Moe and Danielle Smith on the other side has been pretty crazy, but it's all logical.
Are we just ignoring Wob Canoe in the middle? Is that what we're doing? Going right over his head? He's too new?
He's not fighting with anybody, though. He's really out of this. What the fight has been about is energy. And Doug Ford saying we're going to cut off the energy, and Danielle Smith and Scott Moe saying that would be, inciting Western separatism again, and that's a no-go. But let's look at the differences here. For Quebec or Ontario to say we're going to cut off the power to the states is state-owned entities turning off the power to the states. For Alberta to turn and Saskatchewan to turn off the energy, that's private producers who are going to be paying the bill. And that's a very different call to make. In Ontario's case, it's what's the damage with our customers for the power? For Alberta and Saskatchewan, it's what's the deal with future investment in our power? So, of course, there's a fight on this. But honestly, I think we're getting our knickers in a twist over very little right now because this is not happening until January 5th. And so who cares that 2 premiers are disagreeing on approaches right now? We don't even know what we're going to be reacting to yet. So all this idea of disharmony because of a lack of leadership from Justin Trudeau, I think is just overwrought. No, we are having this conversation in public. There are 10 premiers with 10 perspectives and a federal government that has to balance it all. I'm kind of grateful that we are seeing what the fault lines are in trying to develop a defense for Canada, because for me, I'm appreciating the limitations on Justin Trudeau because he can't just wave a magic wand.
All right, let's focus on Ontario a little bit more because you came across a headline that I don't think I believe. Are you sure? Were you sleeping? Were you lucid at the time? Was this a daydream, a daymare, a night wake? I don't know. But wait a minute. Ontario's credit rating has improved?
Yeah. And it's really not a whole lot about it, but we went from AA- to AA+. First such improvement for Ontario since 2001. We had an upgrade in June, and that's a sign that the markets believe the provincial government is more than capable of carrying its debt loads. And that signals better interest rates for us because we are preferred. And I got to admit, I am surprised. Even though we had one earlier this year, we continually hear bad news about how big the numbers are and how bad they are. And like I said, how did this happen? And I phrased it a bit more bluntly to you. I can't say it on the air, luckily. I remember that. But I had no idea that this was going on. If you read the news, this is not a progressive conservative government. This is a drunken sailor spending government. I mean, just the idea of building a tunnel under the 401, I'm like, and you're giving them a better credit rating? It doesn't make sense to me. But there's something that we're missing. And I wish I was a better economist so I could explain it to the listeners. All I can say is there's something that is not being reported and we're missing it, and we're in good shape apparently, and I don't understand why. And that's a problem. I read a lot of news, especially this political economic. This came out of the blue, and I have no idea why. It would be good if we knew why. Maybe then we'd be trying to chase a little bit more of that, as opposed to doing what we're doing at other levels of government. And I don't know what the difference is, because all I know is one's getting downgraded, one's getting upgraded.
Well, it's not going to hurt the provincial Conservatives' re-election chances in what? March, let's say, and then the Feds in June, July, probably more like June.
I've been seeing the provincial ads.
Well, we're going to have 2 elections in the first 6-7 months of 2025, right?
Well, that's just it. Doug Ford wants to go. Doug Ford really, really wants to go. But then the question is, how long can Trudeau last? So Doug Ford has his ideal date in his head. There's a budget on this date, and we'll do this and this and this, and then we'll do that. And all of that could get upended because Chrystia Freeland resigned and the Liberal caucus finally sobers up and says we need a new leader. May you live in interesting times, Mike.
We are living in interesting times, my friend. As always, thanks for stopping by and discussing those interesting times with us.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. I don't think I'll see you again.
You will not until the new year, indeed. David Drewe, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you too. The owner of Negotiating Change, Government Relations and Stakeholder Engagement Strategies, joins us every Monday morning, 11:30 for Drewe's Views here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. I don't know how anyone will top the gift dropped off for me by our friends at Lessard and Innisfree today. Thank you to our friends at Lessard and Innisfree Hospice for the little gift bag that includes the 3 most perfect chocolate bars ever. In order, Crunchy, followed by Wonder Bar, followed by the Kit Kat Chunky. That's it. You might as well just make only those 3 chocolate bars forever and ever. Amen. That's all you need in life. And they're all in the bag, along with a little jar of the most perfect local honey. I love it. A toque and some pens, baby, because I love me some pens. Thank you, Lessard and Innisfree Hospice, for thinking of me and dropping off some of my absolute favorite things all in one bag. It is fantastic and very much appreciated. We are very close to the noon hour, at which time we'll get you an update from the 570 News Center and then open phone lines. Rant or rave. David Drewe left with a rant and a rave, similar to something I received by email. It's got to do with the weather today. We'll talk about that. And maybe, just maybe, you've got a rant or a rave about Chrystia Freeland and this federal Liberal government. Open phone lines coming your way on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night.
Don't talk back.
What a day, what a day, what a day. It's the day, the kind of day that people in my line of work live for. And I'm sure that you feel similarly because you participate in conversations on this show every day. You are engaged and invested in what's going on. And oh boy, are there goings on. Chrystia Freeland is no longer our federal finance minister. She told Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to take his portfolio change and, stick it where the sun don't shine. Apparently she was asked on Friday, would she consider a different role within the federal cabinet, not the finance role. And Ms. Freeland this morning said in a letter that she is resigning from cabinet. She will seek re-election in the next federal election, but she is no longer going to serve as finance minister. The day she was to deliver the fall economic statement. So that's obviously a big story. Something else that has come up on a different scale, but much closer to home, if you will. Shelley sent the following email this morning to Mike at 570news.com under the subject line, driving without lights on. Why? I think you need a segment on why the HE double hockey sticks, we don't all drive with our lights on. And why don't we look for cars before crossing a street? Just stroll into the crosswalk without even thinking about the fog. Use your ding-dang brain, says Shelley. And David Drewe, just before he left, says he has a rant and a rave. His rave is for all the people who have their full headlight system on today. His rant is for those who don't, especially people driving gray cars like the one he was following on the way here that drifted into and then out of the fog. He could see it, then he couldn't. Why? Because it didn't have its lights on. If you do not have your lights on today while you are driving, you, my friend, are a dumbass. Or a jackwagon. Take your pick. Let's get to the phones. They're going to be busy on this Rant or Rave Monday. We'll start with Kyle. Good afternoon, Kyle.
Good afternoon. Good riddance on the Chrystia Freeland thing. I mean, honestly, like, what is going on? You got your budget you're supposed to say today. You got nothing. I think the biggest thing, and for me, in that letter was when she was saying about the tariffs are more important than the gimmicks that are going on or something like that. I think she was strongly against the GST. I don't think she wanted the GST checks to be sent out, but Trudeau really wanted it. And as Trudeau always is, if he doesn't get his way, you're out. So I think this is going to be, I'm not speaking for all Canadians, but I'll speak for myself. I'm very happy that she's resigned. I want to know how much of my taxpayer money is gone and how much of a deficit we are now in. How much did she blow over the budget? I'm waiting for that as well. But I think it's a step in the right direction, but I think Trudeau's, it just shows how much more that Trudeau is the problem, not the other ones that are in the party. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Kyle, appreciate the call. Yes, the letter says from Chrystia Freeland, our country today faces a grave challenge. The incoming administration in the United States is pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including a threat of 25% tariffs. We need to take that threat extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today so we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. That means eschewing costly political gimmicks, which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. Do you think she means rebate checks and GST holidays? Of course she does. I don't think the Prime Minister has an ounce, 1 ounce of fiscal sense. But he thought he had a political gimmick that would work. It doesn't work with his finance minister. Tom, rant or rave?
Oh, it's a rave. Mike, first of all, by the headlights, there is a switch on modern-day vehicles that says auto. So when you start your car, your headlights come on. There's no excuse not to have your headlights on. Secondly is that if we require people who work in, let's say, the YMCA schools and other areas that have children and coaches to pass a security clearance or a police background check, why are we not having the same rules for those who want to run for office, whether it be municipal, federal, provincial, to do the same thing for security clearances? To me, it's sort of the same thing, is that if you want to hold the highest office in this country, you should, first of all, be the first one who was eager at the door to get your security clearance, to be advised on security, the national issues of security of this country. You should not be passing that off to one of your flunkies. And that's my rant.
All right, Tom, appreciate that. So Tom's fired up about security. Many of us are fired up about finances. Paul, good afternoon, rant or rave?
Good afternoon. Hey, listen, two things I want to talk about. First off, I heard one of your listeners called in and said about me having said about there would be no GST checks in the mail. He's right. What I told you at the time was the Liberals said, we're going to issue these checks, knowing that it was going to cost a lot of money. So what they did this on purpose. They said, we're going to issue these checks. And then they blamed the Conservatives for blocking the checks. You know, I was going to give you $1 million this morning. But the guy at the lottery booth gave me the wrong ticket the other day. So blame him, not me, for the fact that you're not getting your $1 million today. But back to the topic of the day. One of our favorite finance ministers. We've got to get this straight. She did not quit. She did not tender a letter of resignation, at least not voluntarily. We all know that Katie Telford told Trudeau to get rid of her. And Trudeau said to Katie Telford, would you happen to have the number for John Wilkes Booth? So she looked through her Rolodex.
Come on. Listen. No, he wanted her out of cabinet or out of the finance portfolio, but he offered her another position, she said. She just didn't want the other cabinet position.
Yeah, well, Katie told Trudeau he had to get rid of her without making it obvious that he was getting rid of another woman cabinet minister.
No, Paul, her own letter says on Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in the cabinet. She was offered another position. She doesn't want it. She's out as finance minister. She says, upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from the cabinet. She could have had a different cabinet position, just not finance anymore. Rant or Rave continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Every Monday, the Talkback Hour is the Rant or Rave edition. That's a tradition here on the show every Monday. So let's get right back to the phones. More rants and or raves. Steve, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, yeah, I was shocked when I heard that news. I actually didn't believe it when I first heard it. I thought we'd never get rid of her. But I will say this. When somebody as morally corrupt as her steps down from her job because she disagrees with what is going on or I don't even know what's going on in that party anymore. I really have to wonder what it is. It's got to be something pretty bad.
Well, she doesn't agree with the financial direction that the Prime Minister wants to take.
Oh, there's more to it than that. There has to be. Like, she's a finance minister, but she's never been concerned with finances, let's be honest. Like, I will commend her, though, because this is the first thing she has done in any kind of position in the Liberal government that's actually going to benefit the majority of Canadians. So good for her.
All right. Steve, appreciate the call. We are a skeptical bunch, aren't we? We think there's more to it than meets the eye. And in fairness, Steve's not wrong. Over these last number of years, it's not as though there has appeared to be, anyway, a whole lot of fiscal restraint. Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Sorry, I won't keep you. I've got a rant and a rave.
Okay.
It was pretty nice seeing you at the Titans game on Saturday.
It was nice seeing you. Thanks for taking the time to say hi.
But so that's my rave. My rant is, and I won't out you on the radio, but I think you know what I was referring to at the end of the game there.
No, you go right ahead. Come on. Let me have it both barrels. Don't pull any punches. We're all about transparency here.
Well, I know you're a local celebrity, so I know you're busy, and I was just disappointed to see you didn't watch any of the second half.
Now, Mark, you're not wrong. I didn't see much more than a lick of the second half. I tried to get a couple of looks to see where the team was at, trying to watch that comeback. Help me out here, brother. If you witnessed that, like, did I have a chance? Did I have a fighting chance of looking at that basketball court on Saturday afternoon?
Well, no, and that's why I said I didn't want to out you on the radio. But, yeah, no, it was good seeing you there. And as always, love to see the Titans, especially win.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, Mark, the next time I'm there, I'm going to look for you and we're going to enjoy the game together.
I'll buy you a beer.
I look forward to that.
All right, sir. You take care.
You too, Mark. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. What a nice guy. Doesn't want to out me. Mark did come up at the end of the game on Saturday and said hi, introduced himself, which I always love. I always welcome those opportunities to meet you in real life. And he says, you know, you didn't watch 1 second of that second half today. And he's not wrong. I honestly did not see. I might have seen one or two plays. When the crowd got noisy, I might look up or whatever the case was. But that's how bad it was. In my defense, I was not staring at my phone. We made a big announcement at halftime about the KW Titans welcoming the Kitchener Panthers into the family. It's Waterloo Region Sports and Entertainment now. The Schoolies have brought on partners, the Huranis, to run both the Titans and the Kitchener Panthers, basketball, baseball, under one umbrella. And I was invited to be a part of that announcement at halftime, which I was glad to accept the honor of doing that because the Panthers have such a long history in this community. And then after that, it was just a whirlwind. There were so many people who were there for the announcement, and they all kind of gravitated towards our end of the court. And the second half was a whole lot of jibber-jabbering and not a whole lot of basketball watching. But it was great to meet Mark at the end of the game. And I look forward to my next Titans game that I will watch much more intently. I promise. I promise. Terry, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Do you remember when Moosey had that mishap in Windsor? Was it last year or the year before?
Why do you want to bring that up, Terry?
Well, the reason I ask, Mike, now I can see why that happened. I went to watch Saturday night down to Windsor to watch the London Knights and the Windsor Spitfires.
Oh, nice.
And I left home at 3 o'clock. You know, I live just west of you. And I thought, a couple hours, I should get there. So I get there just after 5, around 5:50. And I go into the box office, get my tickets, because there's still some available for the game. So my girlfriend and I, we go, we'll go up the street and go grab something to eat. So we went, and we made it back to the arena just before 7. We couldn't get a parking spot. It was full.
Get out.
There was people parked on curbs. Like, why would you want to do that and throw out your alignment? One guy even got whacked in the front. He had his whole headlight was caved in, and he was on the floor. I don't know what was happening there. So eventually I said, I drove around 15 minutes trying to get a parking spot. I'm telling you, it's just chaos over there. I don't know why, but anyway.
I always thought that parking lot is massive, Terry.
It's massive, but there's 3 arenas there. They got a swimming pool. They got other things going on. I couldn't figure out I thought maybe there was a Christmas party going on. But anyway, so I go, there's a little mall nearby off Lozon Parkway. So I go, we'll go over there, park. It's probably like a kilometer. But luckily for me, I found a little side street with the new residential area being built, and I parked there and then walked there. I missed the first 10 minutes of the game, but it was no big deal. But my first thought when I got there was, now I see why Moosey, hit somebody there or he hit a parked car, because it's just chaos. And the funny thing too, Mike, is that arena is built kind of in a remote area just outside the city, so there's ample room there to add more parking spots. So I don't know why they built that facility with such small parking. I don't know. It was strange, but it was a good game anyway. Windsor won 3-2, and London was outshot like 42-17. I don't know if you heard about that. And a handful of their shots that they got, London was the last 2 minutes they pulled their goalie and got probably like 3 or 4 of those 17 shots. So it was a good game anyway. So have a good day, Mike.
Thanks, Terry. You too. So in Moosey's defense, and this guy, he's the stuff of legend when it comes to driving the bus for the Kitchener Rangers. He got his nickname because he avoided hitting Moose on Highway 17 between North Bay and Sudbury on one trip many years ago. But yes, there was a little mishap 2 seasons back in Windsor, but not connected to what Terry's talking about with mayhem in the main parking area. The bus bay is at a different part of the arena, and there are some parking spots back there for team and arena staff. And then other people will park willy-nilly if they know where to go and sneak into a spot. Unfortunately for Moosey, he did hit a legitimately parked vehicle in a marked parking space, and that vehicle just happened to be Windsor assistant coach and former NHLer Andy Delmore's vehicle. And let's just say it was a very nice vehicle. And Moosey was backing the bus up, and inadvertently, the only mistake I've ever seen the guy make, but he crunched Andy's car pretty good. And the rest, as they say, is history. This is the Mike Farwell Show, Rant or Rave on your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, 570 News Radio. Mondays, the Talkback Hour is Rant or Rave, and it wouldn't be complete without a Grant rant. Hello, Grant. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. I wonder how old that Crunchy Bar is. I bet it's about 20 years old.
I'd still eat it. Crunchy Bar, Wonder Bar, Kit Kat Chunky. In order, the trifecta of chocolate bar perfection.
Or you can send it over here.
Nope, not going to happen. Sorry, Grant, it's mine. Nope.
That's not nice.
I know it's not nice, but it's mine. It's all mine.
Well, that was a good game. yesterday, even though we lost, they skated. They were pretty much in line with London. The face-off, all the face-offs were pretty much in line. And
Grant, this sounds like a Christmas miracle that you're happy with the Kitchener Rangers' performance.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
Even the first game, they played pretty good. Even though it was a 3-1 win, they tried, and last night they even tried.
You're right. They tried both times. They were unsuccessful, losing 3-1 the first time and 3-2 yesterday to the London Knights. But the Kitchener Rangers sticking around right there with those nasty, wasty Knights from London. Your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour continues on the Mike Farwell Show. On Mondays, your Talkback Hour is the Rant or Rave edition. Rant because you're upset about something. Rave because you're not. Do either of those things with one phone call to us, 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Get it off your chest and onto the air. Zafari, good afternoon. Hello, Zafari. Going once. Going twice. Zafari is gone. But Ibrahim is here. Good afternoon, Ibrahim.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. It's comment on maybe with the rent, but it is sad, really, hearing our finance minister resigning, especially this time that the country was facing, crisis. And my rent is to Doug Ford, really. And instead of working with the Team Canada, he's not representing the federal government. From the beginning in this until the last week, he was like going to the what's called Fox News, doing interview. And during one interview, he said, I can't meet even 10 minutes with, if Donald Trump meets face to face. Why he acting like that? He's the only premium of one province premium. He should be teamwork. That federal government job. And my rep is really the prime minister. I didn't vote for him, this guy, but this time really he handles well. When Donald Trump, calling him, governor or Canada is a 51 state. Of course, he tried to insult him in Canadian people too, But he handled well instead fire to fire. So it was good. So I would say, that it should be teamwork. The provinces, even they have a division between. Look at Alberta. They said we are not going to stop gas, from United States. So this division is not good for the country's unity. So they should be team approach.
All right.
You don't think so?
Ibrahim, I appreciate the call. I would love to see it happen, but we talked about this a little bit with David Drewe earlier when he joins us for Drew's Views Monday mornings, 11:30. Federalism, getting every province and territory on board with what Ottawa wants or what Ottawa thinks is best. It is a difficult proposition in this country. Never underestimate the power of those Rocky Mountains, and not just their majesty when you look at them, but there is definitely a Western divide. Everybody has their own interests in different parts of this vast nation. So I'd love everybody to get along and work together, but it's really difficult to do in a country as wide, as large, and with so many different interests as ours. Ernie, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Not bad, thanks. How are you?
Good. Happy Monday. Just want to say, too, just with Drew there talking, one thing that really surprised me, and it surprised him, is the credit rating of Ontario there, how that jumped up. What? I need to know, that's some amazing government going on behind our scenes that we do not know about. That's good news, isn't it? I mean...
Sorry, which part's good news?
The credit rating of Ontario.
I know. No, that is. Who knew?
You've talked about the sailor, and it is a drunken sailor like burning the money here. For one, I was just flabbergasted. I'm like, that's the first time I heard of that. I'm like, Drew, were you out with Mikey last night and he came in a little bit late? I don't know. Like, that's what I was worried about there. But I mean, I don't know. Anyway, that's good news. If we got to figure out some numbers on that or get some stories there. But as far as the minister resigning today, Mike, like, I wish my $250 that they took away from me. I already spent it. You know, I want to send them a bill now because it's gone already. But what if couldn't we just give it to Jagmeet there? So, you know, like, he's got more confidence in the Liberal Party than the own Liberals have in their own party, you know, for propping this guy up and holding Canadians hostage. I mean, the budget came out today and said, can we just pay him off his pension so then maybe we can have a vote, you know?
The government won't last much longer, Ernie.
I know, Mike, but it's still sad to me to say one guy can hold us all hostage this long.
I get you.
Mike, we'll talk Saturday later on. But anyways, have a good Monday and thanks.
Thanks, Ernie. Good to hear from you today. It's the way the system works. Love it or lump it, it's the system we've got here. Remember that the Prime Minister in 2015 said that we were going to have a new system of voting in this country, and it never happened. Tracy, you're on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon already. So I have a rant about parking because right now I can tell you there's a fight over accessibility parking spots in this region. I didn't know until it happened to me. I used to be one of those proud downtown Kitchener people that used to walk everywhere and like gloat about it. And now I can't even shop in my city. I have to go to Waterloo because they have accessible parking. I can't believe it. So I went on, you know how City puts out their email, and there's this where you can weigh in to their new development downtown. Highly recommend everyone looks into it. I didn't see any parking spots. And so it will be very pretty, and I like the accessibility, and I like a lot of things, but I would like to know where the delivery drivers and the accessibility spots are and where these people are supposed to park if they're working, right?
We're not supposed to drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the long and the short of it, Tracy, because I know at least one of the buildings you may be referring to that's being built with no parking spots whatsoever because people that live in it are supposed to have everything within a 15-minute walk of their front door.
That's unfortunate because, you know, most of those factory jobs, you have to get a car. And if you have kids, if you don't pick them up at camp by a certain time, FNCS is called. How is a person supposed to parent without a car?
We're learning new ways of doing things, I suppose. Listen, Tracy, I appreciate the call. I understand where you're coming from. It seems like a pretty dramatic change, doesn't it? And this is a direction that I believe our cities are starting to move us in. Parking spots? No. Accessibility to transit? Yes. So it's just, I guess, going to take us longer to get places, parenting or otherwise. This is the Mike Farwell Show, your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, Rant or Rave edition, 570 News Radio. On Mondays, we rant or rave during the Talkback Hour. Rant because you're upset. Rave because you got a smile on your face this Monday afternoon. Back to the phones. Joe, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. The rats are jumping off the sinking ship.
They are indeed, sir.
Yep, and the ultimate hypocrite threw another female cabinet minister under the bus again. Should we be shocked?
No.
No. But here's a good question. Now that there's two less votes in cabinet, does that push them closer to getting turfed out on a non-confidence vote?
Probably. I mean, as Ernie alluded to before, this election can't happen or this government can't fall soon enough. But there are so many intricacies in the system that I don't fully understand. I don't know. But there will be political maneuvering in the days and months ahead for sure.
Well, I'm glad she bailed on him. It's not like she was doing a bang-up job to begin with, but it looks good on him. You know what I mean? So cheers. We'll see you.
Thanks, Joe. I think it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. Good on him, says Joe. Look, we got Sean Fraser, Housing Minister, Chrystia Freeland, Finance Minister / Deputy Prime Minister, gone. And as David Drewe told us earlier today when he was here for Drew's Views, reportedly as many as 4 other cabinet ministers may resign, at least from cabinet, by the end of this week. It is some kind of mess right now. And I'm honestly wondering if there will simply be smoldering ashes left of the federal Liberal Party by the time the next election is completed. But there are times that we have been very surprised by results. So who knows where we're going to go from here. Afif, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Okay, so first rant, Kitchener Rangers lost.
The Rangers lost. Yeah, tough. Well, you know, a tough one yesterday, but they won on Friday, so.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, on Friday, that was an insane game. Like, I love that game. Like, how, like, in the overtime, they won, like, pretty well. I love that part.
Yeah, the overtime was pretty exciting on Friday.
Yeah. Also, did you hear about the Maple Leafs game yesterday? Oh, my God.
John Tavares had a hat trick.
Yeah, and that was insane. I love that. So, yeah, that was my rant and rave.
All right. Thanks, Afif. You too. Cheer for those Maple Leafs. Cheer for those Kitchener Rangers. I love to hear it. 2 more Rangers games before the Christmas break. We're going to be on the road in Sarnia on Wednesday and then at home to Ottawa on Friday night. And then we're going to take a Christmas break and then we're going to head up north. But that's after Christmas. Before Christmas, on the road in Sarnia Wednesday, at home to Ottawa. Come out on Friday night for the final game before the Christmas break. I touched on this during the Farwell Show 5 today at the beginning of the show. And I touched on it somewhat reluctantly because these things are easy, I think, to pick on. This is probably low-hanging fruit when we look at a 4-day trip that the Prime Minister and an entourage took to Italy and Switzerland back in the summer. And the bill for the trip was around $1 million. Meh, especially in the grand scheme of things. Like, I don't think we should be nickel and diming the expenses of a junket to Italy and Switzerland, which I'm sure was for a good reason. And I mean that sincerely. But when you start getting into the details, it does get a little bit frustrating, including the receipts that have been unearthed showing that, and credit to going to Sam the Record Man, there's one left in Ontario, it's in Belleville, going there to buy DVDs so they could have them on the flight. The more than $800 in junk food, Skittles, Red Bull, etc. And this stuff gets expensed. Like, I don't know about you, but when I'm going on a trip and I want some snacks for the plane or I want some entertainment, I sort of buy it out of my own bank account. And by the way, the salary that I earn is not as high as the Prime Minister or any member of that entourage. My point being, surely they can afford a bag of Skittles on their own. It just seems to be a little bit excessive. Like just $800, whatever the DVDs cost, couple $100, fine, in the grand scheme of things. But I don't know why you think you're entitled to spend that money, right? Or expense that money. Spend your own money, which, by the way, is taxpayer money too, if you're a civil servant. But the pièce de résistance in this story is the $71,000 food bill that was part of this $1 million trip. $43,000 on airplane food alone. So the Canadian Taxpayers Federation broke this down, and it said there was an average meal cost of $145, and the total food bill averaged more than $1,700 per member of the Canadian delegation. It was a 4-day trip, $1,700 in food for each person. The average Canadian family spends $1,400 a month on food. A family in a month spends less than what each individual was treated to over 4 days on this trip, including the veal, the lamb, and the 4 different varieties of wine. Look, I know you're on a business trip, you got to eat. But is this the kind of eating that we need to do? It just, again, smacks to me of entitlement. And they believe they are entitled to their entitlements. And their entitlements cost us every single time. It's Rant or Rave on your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Few minutes away from 1, an update at that time from the 570 News Center. And then Now You Know with Rob Snow taking you through until 3. But we're not done yet. We still have time to hear more opinions from you. Back to the phones. Jason, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Tough Steelers lost yesterday. And who says Canadian politics are boring? I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, what's going on here in Ottawa? And I stayed glued for the next hour or so. And lastly, did you talk about the article that that gentleman did on the speed camera study where he basically did his own research saying we don't need the speed cameras in areas because there's not a problem. We're trying to solve a problem when there's not a problem.
I certainly did. I read it with great delight, I might add.
I sent that out to all my fellow colleagues last night saying, hey, there you go. Some of us are right. Anyways, have a great day, Mike. Go Steelers. All right, talk to you later.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate the call. That would be Jason Deneau, Ward 3 councillor in Kitchener. The story on the front page of today's Waterloo Region Record, which I did reference earlier, should have probably done so again. But basically, it's a data analysis done independently by somebody who just geeks out on data, but analyzing 9,000 collisions and found that only 5 times per year were those collisions in the vicinity of a school in the city of Kitchener. In two-thirds of the instances, two-thirds of the schools never had a collision near them. And so the argument that speed cameras are necessary to increase or improve safety in and around schools kind of falls flat because, you see, you don't get safer than 0 collisions or even fewer than 5 per year, quite frankly. So maybe we ought to put our money somewhere else when it comes to safety. But that's just what the data says. I mean, I don't know why we want to think about what the data says. Tom, you're going to get the last word on our show today.
How are you?
Good.
Next election, nothing is going to happen. Nothing. People think there's news going to get minority government, idiot, Singh going to support, and nothing is going to happen.
Why,
I feel bad for Freeland.
Wait. What are you saying, Tom? That you mean it'll be another Liberal minority after the next election?
It's going to be a minority. They're going to get...
well, who's going to have the minority? Conservatives or Liberals?
No, probably Liberals.
You're telling me that when we go to another election, you're on the record, you're stating it'll be a Liberal minority.
No, it'll be a minority.
A Liberal minority, you just said.
Conservative minority.
Now you just changed your mind. I just asked you.
No, just a conservative minority, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay. There you go. Straight from Tom's lips to your ears. The next election will be a conservative minority, but that doesn't really matter. So he did say Liberal the first time. I'm sure he did. But anyway, he's sticking to conservative minority. I got to get the HE double hockey sticks out of here. Make way for Rob Snow. And Now You Know. We'll come back tomorrow morning at 9, do this all over again, okay? Colin Robertson, our guy on the other side of the glass. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.